It's now time to introduce the next speaker, and I'm personally very excited to introduce this next speaker because he's a personal friend of mine. I met him through Mo many years ago, and we've stayed in touch since. And this is going to be Matteo. And Matteo's story is lessons from unlikely places. And Matteo's a very interesting man, a man of many talents. He has a master's in African Studies from the University of Bologna. And you may think, why does he have a master's in African Studies? But when you hear his stories, it'll make more sense. And just so you know, he's not wacky. He also has a master's in social policy and development from the LSE. So he's an academic. And his talk today is all about the lessons he's learned from his time serving the justice defenders and in African prisons. So he's been with justice defenders since 2015, and he's now the director of growth. So can we give a warm welcome to Matteo Cassini, please? Thank you.
So for the past 10 years, I've had the privilege of serving and sharing life with incarcerated communities in the most unlikely places across the world and in Africa in particular. Through my work at Justice Defenders, I have joined a movement of people walking with a limp. Prisoners, ex-prisoners, judges, allies, working in prisons across Africa to defend people who have nobody else to defend them. Today I'm going to share some of my journey and some of the lessons I learned along the way from the most unlikely teachers. Us at Justice Defenders, we are a non-profit working in Kenya and Uganda in prison, providing legal training, education, and services to people who come to prison without access to a lawyer or have no way of affording legal representation. Since we started, we've been training over 600 people as paralegals. We've served over 150,000 people, and 50,000 of them have been released by the courts. We do this work because we fundamentally believe that everybody should have the chance to tell their side of the story. And we do this because fundamentally we recognize our human dignity and our value. This is the first lessons I've learned early on doing this work. All of us are worthy of love, and all of us are loved. My friend and mentor, Alexander McLean, started this work when he was just 16, traveling to Uganda, volunteering at a hospice where dying prisoners were being brought when nobody else was looking after them. As a young man, you wonder, what can I do? You feel disempowered, you feel hopeless, you feel like you're losing heart. But he learned early on that even in the direst of circumstances, in the most challenging places you can find, you can still be with people, see their humanity, help them live and die feeling loved and connected. So let this be the foundation of everything that comes after. You are loved and you're worthy of love. In the times where I am in my lowest, when I'm at the end of my strength, I'm reminded of this lesson. And so if any of you here today is aching, your heart's aching because of illness, because of bereavement, because life has not gone to plan, I hope you can take heart. I hope you can be carried by others. I hope you can allow yourself to be loved. Because this is happening in African prisons, so I believe it can happen in this community, in our homes, and in our lives. And this realization for me was incredibly liberating, because it's an amazing foundation to live life as a quest, as an adventure. That's the second lesson I've learned doing this unlikely work, that all of us in life are called to something greater. In African prisons, you find people who've had incredible challenges and stories of resilience. We invest in them, believing that in that moment of hopelessness, we can find hope. And by investing in them, we can really transform not only themselves, but ourselves and the societies we're a part of. Nelson Mandela was in prison for 27 years before becoming the first black president of South Africa. During his incarceration, he studied law with the University of London. Following his steps, we decided to provide legal education to prisoners and prison officers in Kenya and Uganda. This November, we will be celebrating 67 who have graduated with law degrees from prison whilst serving their sentence. With their skills, they've been serving their communities, and they will serve their communities upon release. Of this amazing cohort, a particular story that I'm fond of is Susan. Susan Chigula was 21 when she entered prison. She was sentenced to death. And from prison, she taught herself. She got high school qualifications. She was a leader within her church and in her community whilst in prison. She was the first University of London student that we engaged in 2012. And she began her studies with University of London, and then she began informally providing legal services to the women that she was incarcerated with. There's a case that now bears her name, Susan Chigula, versus the state of Uganda, where she petitioned and won the petition that now carries her name, and now the mandatory death sentence for capital offenses is abolished. After her work, herself and hundreds of others were set free from prison. She completed her studies in 2018, and now she travels the world as a free woman, advocating against the death penalty. When I met Susan in 2015, her brio and her confidence were not as they were today. However, a belief that life was calling her to something greater, and her willingness to take that call carried her through all her darkest times. What I've learned in all of this is not just about what you do, it is how you do it. Oscar Wilde once said that the problem with prison is not that they break our heart. Our hearts are made to be broken. The problem is that they turn our hearts into stone. So for us as justice defenders, we are working to keep our hearts soft whilst doing work that can sometimes be really overwhelming. So my invitation to all of you, to all of us, is to keep our hearts soft in the midst of the most difficult circumstances we find ourselves in. My friend and colleague, Maurice Cabera, was sentenced to death twice over 10 years ago and spent 13 years in prison. He was a prison officer before then, and he was fending for himself in the northern part of Kenya, fighting bandits, and so many of his comrades dying alongside him. His superior framed him, and Maurice was taken to prison for armed robbery. Throughout his journey, he maintained his innocence. He was a broken man when he entered prison, full of hatred and a thirst for vengeance for the people who brought him there. He contemplated suicide many times, and he contemplated the killing of others too. Until one day, he entered the legal office that we established in Kamiti Prison. He met our paralegals and law students, and he found new hope to serve and to be transformed whilst doing the work. Maurice joined our first cohort of University of London students in Kenya, and in 2018 he graduated with his LLB. And in the same year, his fellow paralegals, they completed an appeal on behalf of Maurice that was submitted to the Court of Appeal of Kenya, and Maurice was exonerated and finally became a free man at the end of 2018. He now joins me on the leadership team of our organization, Justice Defenders, leading our legal education work. Next year, he will be admitted to the bar, becoming a High Court Advocate of Kenya. Without him keeping his heart soft, letting go of the hatred, letting go of the heavy emotions that brought him to prison, he wouldn't have been able to be where he is today. I'm incredibly inspired by Maurice and by the prisoners we work with who live in the most difficult circumstances, who may get to see their children once in a year, who share cells with hundreds of other, and yet they're able to give compassion and courage and kindness and hospitality. So what does that say about my ability to do the same, about our ability to do the same? Another lesson I've learned in all of this is to slow down, because we are all running a marathon and not a sprint. When you're in prison and you work and share life with people who have life and death sentences, who have decades ahead of them whilst in prison, time moves at a different pace. And we live in a world that rewards instant gratification, quick wins, that tells us, go, 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 go. I was in Naivasha prison in Kenya this last June, being part of a training led by Jones Day, this world-class law firm. One of our paralegals, Paul, he wasn't attending the morning session, but he came in the afternoon, jubilant, stormed through the room because his appeal had been heard in court that morning. His sentence went from life to 35 years. Paul was in his mid-50s. He had 9 years left to serve. That prospect will break most of them. It will break me. He was already home. He was already there. And that, again, reminded me of this real lesson in life, that we should train to run a marathon and not a sprint, that we should run at a pace that allows us to be in this life for the long haul, to be able to balance action and contemplation, to be able to balance reflection and recovery with action, because otherwise we'll burn ourselves. As I kept doing the work that I've been doing for now 10 years, I've realized that in this marathon, I am clearly not alone. People came before me, people are all around me, and people will come after me. That means I'm carrying the baton for them. And that gives me purpose and gives me strength as I go on doing this work, because it's something bigger than me. And so I can carry myself lightly. I don't have to have all the answers. I can take one step and the next step will be revealed. And eventually it will benefit generations from now. When you are in the business, like we are at Justice Defenders, of transforming life and systems, most likely you won't see the fruit of the work that you do in your own lifetime. But if you do it well, the people after you will, and they will benefit for what's to come. Many people, many of our paralegals in African prisons are working on public interest litigation. That means that they're using their legal knowledge to petition the government of Kenya to change laws that are unjust, that perpetrate their defenselessness. Most likely, most of them will not benefit from the work that they're doing, but generations from now, people will. And we will have a much more justice system because of the work that's happening now. So let's remember, let's remind ourselves, we're all carrying the baton for those who are coming next. Whilst we're not running a sprint, I think I need to sprint to complete my speech. And so I will share the last lesson I've learned, or that I'd like to share today, which is have the courage of your own convictions. Nelson Mandela once said, it's impossible until it's done. And at Justice Defenders, we often say we're in the business of making the impossible possible. And we've seen it over and over and over again through the stories that I've shared, and we'll continue to see that. Amizi Mesari, another colleague of mine in Kenya, whom I've met in 2014 when I was just starting. He had just come out of prison then. And again, he was one of the first people who joined our University of London program, studying law whilst incarcerated, and upon release continuing with his studies. He graduated in 2019, but his thirst didn't stop there. His willingness to go all the way from being a defenseless person to becoming a defender of the defenseless led him to continue in his journey. When other people told him it's impossible, you cannot become an advocate, people with lived experience of incarceration have no chance. He persisted with determination and courage in his own conviction. He kept going when others told him it's impossible. And just last year, in December, he was admitted as an advocate of the High Court of Kenya, the first of our generation. That tells us there's no excuse not to have the courage of our own conviction. And when we do, we're able to conquer the impossible. So as I leave you with these reflections and the stories of the people that have inspired them, I hope you will want to learn more about the work of Justice Defenders, and I'll be very happy to share with you later today. And I hope you'll want to support it. And as I close, I'd like to leave you with what's become maybe a mantra or a manifesto for us at Justice Defenders. words that have inspired me. And I'm no man of faith, and this is a Franciscan blessing, but we welcome everyone. I hope they will resonate with you as well. May God bless you with discomfort at easy answers, half-truth, and superficial relationships, so that you may live deep within your heart. May God bless you with anger at injustice, oppression, and exploitation of people, so that you may work for justice, freedom, and peace. May God bless you with tears to shed for those who suffer pain, rejection, hunger, and war, so that you may reach out your hand to comfort them and to turn their pain into joy. And may God bless you with enough foolishness to believe that you can make a difference in this world, so that you can do what others claim cannot be done, to bring justice and kindness to all our children and the poor. Thank you.
Wow. What a fabulous talk. And so inspiring and so unlikely. I think that was the main takeaway, and the word unlikely for me, and just how, that perseverance, that dedication, that want and desire to be better and for the world to be better. It's so present, I think, here today. It's present in Mo. It's present obviously in your work, Matteo. And yeah, some really good life lessons. I'm going to have a chat with you because I'm about to do some criminal justice work myself. So, so thank you so much.